And welcome back. I am John from Tiny Workbench, and this is the second episode of Behind the Workbench, where we talk about some of the it's me, where I talk about some of the design decisions, thoughts, and things behind our upcoming TTRPG, Aeons of Adventure. Right, so I'm just gonna ramble a little bit for about an hour or so. If you have any questions at any point in time during this thing, feel free to drop it in chat. There's a slight delay from my, because I'm looking at the chat from my phone. If there's any questions in the chat, I'll try and answer them as and when I'm able to. Right? And so without further ado, let me just talk a little bit about the format in which we are going to go through this thing. So if you have missed the previous one, this is kind of just me rambling on about design things, and generally I'll go down a list of topics, right, so that I'm able to like clip them and things like that. So I'll be putting like the topic header on top of my little video frame here, and I'll just ramble on about it. So let's get into our very first prompt. Right. Okay. If you guys have followed the project on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, on in our Discord chat, right, or Discord channel, you'd have seen that recently I posted a little like picture about the Daera, and this picture is not new. This Daera, the review of the race happened a while back in one of our previous Tiny Tabletops. I think it's like episode 9 or something like that, right? Where we go through all of the races and we give like a very brief description about all of the races of Aeons of Adventure, and in particular in the setting of Aeons of Adventure, the setting is known as Corinthia, right? So Corinthia is not is well, most RPG worlds are not the typical worlds, but Corinthia in particular is extra influenced by JRPG style worlds where we have big monsters. You're fighting gods. Everybody looks good in a sense, traditionally good, right? That's one of the things that you might notice if you were to play JRPGs like Final Fantasy and whatnot. Most characters look pretty nice, right? There's generally no quote-unquote ugly characters per se, right? So there's one of the trends that we have. So in our the 5 races available for the play. So this is the picture of the box cover for our upcoming Kickstarter, which all description all of the links are in the description below, right? So it's the box cover for our basic set. So on this thing, you have 5 races, right? So you have the humans, the claimants, you have the Viennans, then you have the elves, then you have the Daera, right? So Daera is the latest one that we just posted, right? So Daera are like the new, well, no, it's not new, it's not particularly new, but it is our new take on the Tiefling and actually the Azama, right? So why did we do Daera, right? Why didn't we just do like demons or your typical like red skin kind of like demonic devilish race kind of thing, right? So the conception of the Daera, right? Daera is yes, it is our take on Tiefling and demon and that style of race, but at the crux of what the Daera is actually just a race that is extraordinarily aligned with the divine or with greater powers that are of a godly nature, right? So that means that if you are a tiefling, traditionally, right, a tiefling has some kind of infernal lineage with like a demon or a devil, right? Or if you are a demon, then your lineage is to your archdevil or archdemon. So the same thing goes for the Azama, right? The Azama is it's a celestial being. It's a being that is intrinsically tied to some kind of a god, right? Some kind of like a holy entity. It could be like a Pegasus or unicorn or like a mythical creature that is worshipped that is inherently good. So what our Daera is, right? The Daera is a race that takes on a kind of divine nature that is based on one of these. It could be good, it could be bad, right? And I think that's the main difference that we have to tieflings and to demons and stuff like that, right? It is the combination of like a race that is very much dependent on the nature of their divinity and what they're drawn to. And the way that it is determined, it's kind of determined on birth, right? It's by race. So you can kind of look at it in the sense that like, oh, your sub race or your birthright or birthhood already is kind of determined for you based on your parents, right? Now, is that strictly true? Not necessarily, but that's the baseline that we have, right? So, in a sense, you can think of the Daera as like there's the old school Dragonborn lore, which was designed that like the Dragonborns and the kobolds kind of created to serve dragons. So you can kind of look at it in the same way where the Daera are like these god servants per se, right? Or like cultists or natural fanatics. They are that sort of god servants that are they're not made by the gods directly to serve their needs, but they were in a sense metaphorically made to serve them, right? So they will pursue this divinity. Of course, the relationship per Daera to the divinity is not consistent, right? Like there are some Daeras who are not going to pursue their divinity or whatnot. But that was one of the things that we wanted to create, which is that this is a race where there is a choice, right? You scale like from normal kind of like weird colored skin guy to someone who is extremely connected to divinity, to the gods, to these kind of powers. Could be a devil, could be an angel, could be a fae, could be all of those things, right? As long as it's a class as a divinity and someone who is of a celestial nature. All right, 1 second. Okay. Right. So why do we not just have Azama and Tiefling? right? So like I mentioned just now, we want to combine these two kind of because they are really two sides of the same coin, right? Is there really a reason for you to have both tieflings and Azamar, right? And fundamentally, we've come to the conclusion, no, right? As for whether something is divine or not, that's a different story, right? And we will clarify what is divine in the actual rulebook and the law set and stuff like that. But you can kind of generally think about all of the things that you know to be divine as divine. That could be radiant light, it could be a god of magic, could be a god of war. All of those things are considered divine, right? As long as they're not in Corinthia off the planet. So that's the one kind of like caveat there, which is that all the gods of Corinthia are not from the planet itself, right? Yeah. It's it's kind of like separated intrinsically. So the as a little bit of like a law drop here is that in the War of Corinthia, which is the setting of Aeons of Adventure, the basic set, right? So Corinthia has the Corinthia is the planet, right? And Corinthia has a lot of like natural elemental energies and all that stuff, right? So different spots will have different concentrations of power. Could be like fire, could be lightning. In the case of our short adventure, right? That location is known for its accumulation of lightning energy or lightning magic. So thus the thunder steps, right? So in these places, they will spawn large colossal creatures, and the colossal creatures are called titans, right? These are not gods, right? There's a distinction. They could be worshipped like gods, but they are not technically gods in the Daera sense, right? And so in that very sense, Daeras and elves are different. If you have seen the video, which is a clip from our original stream, we kind of gone through that these things are not exactly the same, right? So what are like the core defining traits, right? The core defining trait of Daera is the horns, right, and the tattoos and the skin color, of course, right? So the Daeras manifest physically their mental, their physical, their mental, physical, and emotional and spiritual, everything, right? So their entire being, right, is intrinsically tied to divinity and whatever the divinity is. So if it could be light, then it will show up like this guy over here. And if it's arcane, then it'll show up like this lady over here, right? So you can imagine if you're light, like the horns would take on the same nature as light. It could be like broad, strong, thick, right? And your tattoos will manifest with light energy and stuff like that. Your eyes may glow more, and your skin color is going to become more pale, more alabaster, kind of yellowish, right? As for arcane, your skin's gonna turn bluer, purpler, and then your horns are sleeker, kind of to represent the sleek nature of arcane magic, right? It's very elegant, flowy, structured, not structured in the same way that Radiant is. Radiant is very much order, and arcane is not chaos, it's order, but it's an elegant kind of order, right? So it's kind of like in between. If we have chaos, order, and neutral, it is between order and neutral, right? And so, where was I going with that? Yeah, so it manifests in them physically, right? And the core traits are these manifestations. So as a young day, right, you're gonna be born right into this world of Corinthia, and you're gonna look like you could look like a normal person, right? You could look like a normal person with different skin color and slightly pointy ears, right? And which is not too different from the elves, right? When the elves are born, they are not born immediately with like a great affinity for all of the elements around them. They're like a sponge, right? They take on these things. Whereas the Daera are bloomers. They are born without much manifestations, and the closer they grow towards divinity, more of these manifestations will show up, right? Big horns, like thicker tattoos, and more of these elemental effects will show upon their body itself. Right. So give me a second. And yeah, with that as one of those core traits, so that also means that as a Daera, you might choose to not pursue your divinity. Now, what would that look like, right? That could be in the sense that you are a Daera who is not pious. Even though you are constantly bombarded with this information from the divine, you could maybe perhaps see spirits, you could hear things, You might be drawn to certain cults emotionally, right? You might feel something. Now, it's not wise for in TTRPGs for DMs to take control of a player's or character's feelings. But sometimes when you have an external force, right, it's it's something that's projected onto their being from what is essentially their god, right? And so in this sense, if you want to play a type of race that kind of gives the wheel over to the DM a little bit more by being this kind of like um cleric or paladin by default, right? Then this would be the race for you, right? The main inspiration, on the other hand, for the Daera are, well, if you've seen what I think it was the Radiant Mastery. So if you've seen the Radiant Mastery has like this image on it, right? Which is an image of one of the Daeras casting Radiant Strike. So Radiant Strike is like the rank 0 skill of the Radiant Mastery, right? So the Daera are very much designed after like the Romans, the Greek, the Vatican, looking at like the Catholics and stuff like that, right? They're very much designed after that main concept. But that was where we started. We started with light demons, right? And then we was like, okay, let's just spread this all out to the arcane, to the fire, to all of that stuff. So we have in the basic set, we have the Radiant one, and then we have the arcane one. So those are our two main ones right now, right? In the future, we hope that maybe you design more stuff based on the other gods. Um, but I think that would also have to come with more interesting skills. So as a little bit of a footnote for people who aren't familiar with the way that races work in Aeons of Adventure, it's that Aeons of Adventure, when you pick a race, right, the races don't. When you pick a race, what the races determine is a list of skills that you can choose from. So in the basic set, each race comes with two skills that you can choose from, so you can choose one of the two, right? And they act the same as any other skill. So you have a card. The card will represent that you have this racial lineage ancestry in your blood somewhere, right? You could be up to two different ancestries, which is the reason why I mentioned that, right? And it comes with a skill, and then depending on your race, you get to choose from one of the 2 of the 10 skills, and then you choose one, right? So we have 5 races, each race gets 2. And the Daera get, I believe it was Inner Light and Mana Break. So if you want to see what Inner Light does, go watch the video, right? So yep, that is the Daera, right? Let me think about it. Is there anything else I'd like to add for the Daera? So yeah, we didn't want to do Tieflings and we didn't want to do Azamar. So now that they're combined together and they're just this kind of like alignment baby, what happens to like the visual of the Azamar, right? Because Tieflings, these guys look like Tieflings because they got the horns, they're demonic looking, right? And the horns are a very core feature. There's like markings and stuff. So what happened to the visual of the Azamar, right? What if you don't want the horns? What if you just want to be like this like angelic kind of like feathery being? So we have a different race for that. And we've seen our other videos. There's a lady over here, which is and in my previous design diary, we have seen two bird people on the left and the right. With the Viennans, right? And the Viennans kind of take on that winged look. So it could look more like an actual bird, or it could also look like like a harpy. It could look like a Valkyrie, depending on the type of bird you're after, right? So it could be a dove, could be eagle, phoenix, all kinds of things. So you can let your imaginations run wild there. But the core concept behind the Viennans is the bird relations, and I won't get into that because I'll probably do that like next week or something. But that is one of those things that in a visual design space now belongs to the Viennans instead of the Daera, or rather instead of the Azamar, right, in particular. So yeah, that's with the Daera. And so another thing that we've gone through this week, last week, Saturday or Friday for the Americans, would be the Frost Mastery. So we released the review for the Frost Mastery and went through like what the Frost Mastery is, its skills, how we designed it, and some of the thoughts behind the Frost Mastery itself, right? And the Frost Mastery is actually I believe it was the very last mastery that we designed, right? And it was done in a almost like because it came after we've designed every single other mastery, right? And we have kind of reached this point where we are pretty sure of how we wanted to design the skills. So the Frost Mastery was actually done in like record time. The skills just came out just like that. We solved most of the design problems that we wanted to hit with the Frost Mastery right from the get-go, which was that it's a medium range guy. We want him to channel more spells. We want him to do like cold and chills and stuff like that, right? And with our at that point, with our understanding of the system that we have developed already, and after the playtest, Frost became one of the easiest masteries that we've designed of all of them. But now the reason is that Frost wasn't the reason. The reason why Frost was the last was that Frost was never meant to be actually part of the original set of masteries, which is a really funny story because initially our magical masteries. So there are four magical masteries, right? We have martial masteries, magical masteries, and specialist masteries, which are like our specific skill sets that are not part of the how to say. Yeah, there are specific skill sets that you draw your skills from and are not classes, right? So you will spend a single mastery point onto whatever that skill set could be. So it could be Frost Mastery, it could be like your Blade Arts, which is the way you use swords, right? And you pick and you create your very own little class, right? Or your class fantasy in particular, right? So if you want to be like this Arthur style character, like Arthur from Warcraft, you could pick up like swords, and then you could also pick up Frost Mastery, and you could have this like half thing and wear heavy armor. So that's the goal behind the masteries. Initially, we didn't have Frost. Initially, we actually designed a Storm Mastery, right, which was a lightning magic. The mastery is very cool, plays very well. However, we were designing this alongside the adventure that is so in the basic set, right? Comes with the rulebook, and it comes with an adventure, and the adventure is where you fight the big cow, right? That is in the Kickstarter pre-launch picture, right? Cow, as you can see, has a lot of lightning. It is a lightning elemental of sorts. So you can imagine if you were to play a lightning character and have to deal with a lightning monster, probably not going to be very effective, right? And we're limited in the number of masteries that we can create for this basic set. So it was at a point where you would be fighting an elemental made of lightning. You'd be casting lightning spells and it does either less damage or no damage, and it just seemed like you are forced into making a bad decision. So we made the decision to cut Storm Mastery from the basic set just to because we are providing an adventure, right? We don't want the players to pick a mastery that is pretty much always bad for this basic adventure. It's gonna leave a very bad taste in whoever's trying this system for the first time, right? It's like why am I allowed to play a storm mage if everything's immune to lightning, right? And so with that, we decided at the last moment, like let's swap out the storm mastery, let's stop the frost, right? We have like an internal list of like all of the masteries that we intend to release eventually or design eventually, right? And there are, I think, in the basic set, it's gonna be about like 60% of the variety of the masteries that are gonna be hit. Not the depth, just the different kind of masteries, right? So about 60% of them are gonna be in there. And if you have seen like the little previews of the masteries, right, with all of the little ones, those represent all of the masteries that will be in the basic set. And on our internal list, there's already a lot more, right? That is just something that's not suitable for the basic set right now, right? Because it would either be too much work or it's thematically like just doesn't really make sense, right? So yeah, like the Frost Mastery came out really quickly. We wanted to get something that was medium range. So of the different masteries, right? We class them between melee or short range, medium range, and then long range. So long range is anything after 60 feet. Medium range is like 30 to 60 feet, and then short range is everything below 30, right? So Radiance is like a short range character, short range mastery, right? Doesn't have to be, but it's mainly designed around being short range. Frost is medium range, and then things like the Archer is long range, right? So they can shoot really, really far and stuff like that. So that's how we class the different ranges when we're designing the masteries. So Frost, we knew from the start, Frost and Fire, they were both medium. We wanted to match them together, right? And Frost is supposed to be like the more defensive, more support. And a lot of this stems from like playing World of Warcraft. Like I played a lot of World of Warcraft during that time. I stopped after midnight because midnight was not the best. But we designed the Frost Mastery while we were playing a lot of World of Warcraft. So it's like you can think about like Frost DK, Ice Mage, like Ice Mage, Frost Mage, Cold Mage. I'm not sure what the actual name. I think it's Frost Mage, right? Like the Frost spec. And at the same time, looking at what has already been done in many other RPGs, right? And trying to nail down like what exactly is the fantasy that we want to achieve, by bringing Frost Mastery to the mastery list, right? Like with all the masteries, we want people to be able to pick this mastery, right, and achieve a certain kind of fantasy that they have in their head. Be it like an Arthas style mastery, like fantasy, or like Jaina, in Warcraft, or perhaps you want to be like this, like Ash in League of Legends, right? Achieving that kind of fantasy is the reason why we design the masteries the way they are. Now, are they all going to be achievable? No, because we are limited to 5 skills per mastery in the basic set, right? So not every archetype is going to be covered by what we're going to release currently. But yeah, having that clear kind of vision in mind, Frost came out just like that, right? Yeah, it replaced Storm Mastery in the kind of list of mastery. So if we ever do get to the next set of masteries after the basic set, you can sure bet that Storm's gonna be on there, right? And in the basic set, we're gonna hint like a few other ones. There's gonna be, I think, at least 2 other masteries that will be hinted. If you're a DM, you will see certain skills that are like, okay, that's something new, right? So, this is a little bit off topic, but as a if you were to purchase the set, right, it comes with different cards. So players get cards that are this size, and DMs get cards that are this size. So this is like a jumbo playing card, right? And it's a landscape kind of card. So on the card itself, it's gonna be like the same thing. There's gonna be like a title, a card type here, which is the monster type, and all the tags, right? But the difference is, for normal cards, you have a card back, right? And for DM cards, which are monster cards, you get a stat block. Right, so everything that's required to play the monster is on a stat block behind, and so, the game masters, when you're looking at the monster cards, right, some of the skills that are going to be on there are going to be from masteries that are not released yet. So that's something for you to look out for if you're interested. And so with that is we've covered everything that I posted in the past week. So that was yesterday and then on Saturday. So now we'll get on to the actual prompts that I've written down. Right. Let's hydrate a little bit. So, okay. I think mentioned last time. We have no damage rolls in Aeons of Adventure. So, in fact, we only have rolls. We only have 3 kinds of rolls. There's a challenge roll, which is your traditional just default check, right? Blast rolls, which are your saving throws equivalent, right? And then we have strike rolls, which is your attack roll equivalent, right? And so with these 3 rolls, it is a roll and done. So if you're trying to achieve something, you make 1 roll and that's it. There's no other rolls. We don't allow for re-rolls. Minus certain skills, right? But generally, we don't allow for re-rolls. And we want to have 1 roll and accomplish everything that's required to be done in a single action, right? The only exceptions are opposing rolls where 2 players roll to beat their numbers. But if not, generally, if you want to do something, you're going to do 1 roll. So we made the decision, right, when very, very, very early on, to not have damage rolls, with the purpose of speeding up combat and action, right? Because one of the things that I've experienced when playing other TTRPGs, when you have attack rolls and you have damage rolls, you start rolling a lot and you delay turns, right? Because you are first rolling to hit, and then you're like, oh, if I don't hit, I'm not gonna prepare my damage dice. But if I hit, I'm gonna prepare my damage dice. I know if you're a more experienced player, you're gonna want to prepare your damage dice, of course, right? Like, irregardless of whether you hit or not, you prepare your damage dice already, so you throw them, right? But I found that be it DMing for others or like myself, when I make an attack, I'm not prepared with my damage dice already, and I'm not prepared to do the calculation at the same time, right? So making the attack roll is very simple. You just roll, you beat the number, and that's it, right? You add a single modifier, which I'll go to later. You add a single modifier, and you beat the target number. Easy, right? Now rolling damage though, right? That's when you have to roll like, okay, like you're rolling multiple dice, you're rolling different dice types, right? and you start counting, doing math on the spot. And that's what we found really slowed down combat in TTRPGs. Like, holy, like that was like the first thing that we were like, okay, that's gotta go. Right. That feels bad. I understand that there's a lot of like randomization that can happen because of damage rolls, but God, there has to be a better way to do that, right? And traditionally, the other TTRPGs have done away with the attack roll instead, which means that every attack, if you were to do an attack, is always going to have an effect. It's either always going to hit or it's always going to miss. It's either or, right? And now that does speed up combat, of course. That speeds up the action of the RPG, right? By not rolling, and especially in there are some systems out there who are like extremely lethal, so they want to encourage you to avoid combat by making damage basically compulsory, right? That's not our goal. Our goal is for you to participate in combat when you feel that it is, narratively fitting and fun, right? Because everything in AOA is skewed towards combat. So very early on, we wanted to encourage combat, and to if combat's a drag, players are going to try and avoid it, right? And if damage is compulsory and unavoidable, players are also going to try and avoid it. So the way that we wanted to make combat as kind of encouraged as possible, which is to make you which was to make your rolls feel fun, especially when you're trying to make an attack, a strike, a blast, or whatever it is, right? And so we came to the final conclusion, which is that, okay, instead of rolling for the damage, we only want one roll, and we have is a 2d6 game, right? So you roll 2d6, you add the number, you beat the target, right? You just roll this 2d6 when you strike, and that's it. You don't roll damage. But how do you determine the damage? And doesn't that remove all variance? So what we've done there is that damage numbers are written all decided as kind of like a flat number. So if you were to strike with a sword, you would always do this amount of damage. If you were to strike with a fireball, you will always do X amount of damage, right? Minus bonuses from your items, from your skills, and all that kind of stuff, right? So those are the kind of things that we decided very early on, which means that we scaled everything around that. And onto the second point is that, what about variance? So this will actually bring me on to the very next prompt that I have planned, which is varying success. So because we have 2d6s, right? We could vary the damage based on the roll itself, which will result in high evasive characters always taking high damage because you have to roll high to hit them in the first place. And ironically, low evasion characters, which are the tankier guys, actually getting hit by like low hits, right? Which seems to be a bit lopsided. But what we decided instead is that, okay, you roll, you pass evasion, great, you do baseline, right? And what we have is that actually our cards have multiple effects. So it's a bit small. This is a strike skill. So strike skill is when you make an attack against an enemy, right? You roll 2d6 and then you have a varying level of success, which is determined by the number of sixes you have rolled. So if you roll 2d6 and one of them is a 6, and the second number, whatever it is, still adds up and beats the enemy. So let's just say you get like a 6 and a 3, which is a 9. 9 in 2d6 is pretty high because your maximum is 12, right? So 9, you still beat the enemy's target number, and then you roll a single 6. Now you get a scaling effect. You get a bonus. It could be a +1, it could be a +3, depending on the skill, right? So each individual skill and action has a different pre-recorded and quantifiable for you to reference number, right? So you can do math more quickly, right? For your reference on your cards, that is recorded on the card itself, right? Of course. So when you roll a 6, you get that bonus effect, right? And when you roll 2 6s, which is I think it's like 3.8% or something like that, right? When you roll 2 6s, you get an additional effect. So that's the critical, right? That's the critical in AOA. So that's how we determine different levels of success with strikes. So yes, more often than not, you're going to land your hit, and more often than not, it's going to be the same damage, right? But when you do land a 6 or a double 6, it becomes 2 steps higher, right? 1 step or 2 steps higher. Now, you might think that, okay, that is a bit too random in that case, right? You're instead of rolling your damage dice, now you are, depending on the power of the great success and the critical success, you're kind of forced into this thing where, oh, like, do I want like a 4 damage hit or 7 damage hit? Like, this 1/6 can make a big difference. Well, that's where advantages, disadvantages, and things like flanking plays a very big part in combat, right? Especially in combat. Less so in, well, actually that's not true. Even in challenge rolls and in blast rolls, it does make a difference as well. But mainly in combat, because we're looking at strikes now, right? So when it comes to damage, there are multiple ways to achieve a higher rate of getting a 6, right? So when it comes to varying successes, these are things that we determined very early on that we wanted to move towards. And one of the things that we did determine very early on is a stacking advantage. Not every player or GM likes stacking advantage because it does make this thing where it creates a certain type of gameplay, right? Which is that players are going to try every single like cheesy thing to stack as many advantages as possible for you to do like a single big attack, or every action to stack all the advantage things, right? And personally, I don't see an issue with that. I don't think that it's a very big deal. I think that it makes sense that if you are an adventuring party, you would want to get all of the advantages that you can whenever you can, doing whatever you can do, right? Because why would you not do that, right? Like, if you could do something to put yourself into an advantage, you should do something to put yourself into an advantage, unless you narratively can't, right? So we don't see an issue in particular with stacking advantages in that sense. And because the way that the game is designed is you already hit more often than not, stacking advantages doesn't have the same kind of effect that you would traditionally have in other TTRPGs, right? Be it stacking boons and banes or whatever lah, right? So because of that nature, now strikes take on a very different kind of a tactical approach, right? You are going to be rolling your dice, and you want to find ways to stack advantages every time you make a strike, or guarantee some kind of way to get a great success or above, right? So there is a way to do that. You can do it via conditions. You can do them by also flanking enemies, which is not available to range characters, right? So flanking is a melee kind of move where you have 2 players, right? Like they're standing opposing sides or like not together in front of an enemy. And by flanking enemy, when you make a flanking attack, you are guaranteed to have great success, right? Which means that you have eliminated the lowest tier of melee, of melee strikes, and bring everything up to great success and above, provided you have an ally, right? So it requires setup, which is in the same line, is in the same vein as stacking advantages and getting as many different ways to stack them as possible. Now, there aren't that many ways to stack advantages currently in AoA, but whatever is there is interesting, right? And advantages, the way that it works is you roll an additional die and you take the 2 highest die. All disadvantage is the 2 lowest dice, right? Additional die and 2 lowest die. Each advantage cancels out each disadvantage, right? And so what ends up happening is that you make a strike and you are rolling, if you have meta this, right? So by default, you roll 2d6 and then you just take whatever the number is. If you have advantages, you roll 3d6, you roll the 2 highest ones. And as you stack more and more and more, we have reached this point where we have players who were like, I think it was like the archery guys, right? So if you see now archery mastery, you know that there's a focus skill. And the focus skill, you can spam the focus skill to stack advantage with your stamina point cost and then focus and fire out a single big shot by rolling a shit ton of dice, right? And that also means that you can roll like 5 dice, 6 dice, and your allies are using like on my mark with inspiration and making it like 7 dice, but it's all for a single attack, right? And at the end of the day, yes, you guarantee that that critical success, but at what cost, right? So yeah, that is varying successes when it comes to damage, right? And why we remove the damage roll and what we replace the damage roll with. Now, varying successes outside of strikes can come in the form of just succeeding in a single task better or worse, right? So instead of I've seen some other TTRPGs do things like by 5, which is that when you roll a d20 and you add your modifier and you beat the difficulty by 5, you get a bonus. that's interesting, but we roll 2d6, so our numbers are really small. So by 2 or by 3 is not as interesting, right? Like you will easily achieve the by 2s or by 3s if we don't fine tune the difficulty enough in terms of like attributes and default challenges and stats and stuff like that. So by using the same system, which is the 1d6, the as in the 1-6 or 2-6, which is the great or critical success, we have also developed the opposite, which is the great failure and critical failure version, right? Thus varying levels of success, right? So you have critical failure, great failure, failure, success, great success, critical success, all dependent on the number of sixes that you have. And what that ends up doing is that everybody is trying to find ways to get as many dice to roll when you are, and as many advantages or diminish as many disadvantages when you're trying to roll to accomplish an action, right? And what that has resulted in is that it has made players through our playtest, right? What we've seen observe is that it has made players really plan much more around their team, around their friends, and the way they approach something, right? When they are trying to accomplish any task, be it a challenge, be it attack, be it whatever it is, right? And that extends through other mechanics as well. But in the part of varying successes, those are the things that we did observe. Yeah. So that's with varying successes. Then let's go on to the next one. It's already 8:38, so I rambled quite a bit. Okay. So now we've talked about rolling dice and stuff like that. What about ability scores? Right? Does AOA have ability scores? And no, we don't have ability scores. We do have attribute modifiers, so it's not like your attributes are gone, right? But we don't have like a score that you refer to a table and then you convert the number over to a modifier and you add a modifier over the thing, right? Because that is just annoying, right? Like if I were to show a fresh TTRPG player, right? Like the ability score table, they're like, what is this, right? Like, why do I have a 20 strength and I get a +5, and I have a 19 strength and I get a +5, and then I go to 18 and there's a +4, right? That's just annoying. So what we have, and this is a character sheet, right? So this will be available for download after we launch the Kickstarter. So there's the character sheet right now, and on the side, right, we have 5 attributes, right? So we have might, dexterity, vigor, affinity, and charm, right? So there's no wisdom and in. If you're from D&D, there's no wisdom and in. We have 5. We still have a stat that determines your health bonuses and stuff like that. And then we still have like the usual, like the might, the dexterity, the affinity, which is the intelligence wisdom combo, and then the charm. And instead of putting a number that you have to convert, you just add the modifier. Very simple, right? I think many other games have done this, and we have thought that yeah, this is pretty good. And because it's a 2d6 game, it's already like really simple small numbers to add together. Adding +1 and +2 is pretty simple already. So yeah, that's what our ability score system would be. So you just get you can do standard array, which is going to be a +2, +1, +1, +0, and -1, or you can do point by and all that, you know, the typical like stat distribution stuff. So that's why that's the way that our ability scores work. Now there is going to be another ability score, ability modifier, that is not determined by your choosing, but rather determined by your level. So in other games, you might have like level scaling skills or modifiers similar to proficiency. And essentially, yes, we have proficiency, but proficiency does not affect your weapons or your attacks and stuff like that. That's not what proficiency does in AOA. So what it does instead, which is related to this topic. So why do we not have wisdom and intelligence? I don't like wisdom and intelligence. I think that it is very weird that like a character has to add points into wisdom, in particular in wisdom and intelligence, if like for example, if you were like a barbarian and you would dump your wisdom or instat or your charisma stat, which is also really important, right? Like you have to dump one of those 3 stats for no reason at all. Like what's stopping you from being a somewhat wise character without having to dump you get the point, right? So instead of having wisdom and intelligence be intrinsically tied to an attribute or a stat, right? What it is instead is that we have combined wisdom and intelligence in the sense that your ability to learn and your ability to be smart is now tied to the affinity stat, and what it represents is your ability to pick up on things or to learn things. Now, when it comes to being knowledgeable about things that you do every day, like if you are, and I'm going to use this example again, if you're a farmer, you're farmed every day, there's no reason why you need to have high affinity to learn things about farming. We have done this for 10 years already, right? Now, could you be a better farmer? Sure, right? But traditionally, like if you have spent time on it and if you have mastered this skill, your knowledge is going to carry you for the most part, right? Unless talking about like geniuses, right? Your knowledge is going to carry you, and that is the last the attribute modifier, which is knowledge, and knowledge is determined by your level, which is I think something that's more fitting. So when players level up, they increase their knowledge modifier. So it starts at a point +2, then it becomes a +3, and eventually becomes a +4, right? So it scales with you as you level up, right? And +4 is pretty high if you roll 2d6, right? It's like 12 +4, like that's a massive number, right? In the scale of 12. So, but the question becomes, so what do I use knowledge for? Because this thing scales at my level, right? You cannot be telling me that I can use my knowledge to make attacks, which you can't. So knowledge can only be used in two conditions, right? Which is that instead of doing like your typical like so if you were to try and do something traditionally in like another RPG, you may have to use a skill, right? You may have to have like an athletic skill. You can have to be like a nature skill or like animal handling or like history or something like that, right? All these things are represented with the single set of knowledge. Does your character know this thing? If your character knows this thing, ignore every other stat, just roll with knowledge, right? If I have the technique, I have the training, I've already done this before, just roll with knowledge, right? And the other condition is that if something falls under your expertise, you also roll with knowledge. And what does that mean, right? So instead of having skills traditionally as you have in the other RPGs, you don't get that long list of skills. What you get instead is you decide two expertise, and these two expertise can be whatever they want them to be, as long as it's tied to your character's background. Right? They should be determined by your character's background and what he has done before he has become an adventurer. Right? And so whatever this thing could be, maybe you were a bartender and you're really good at doing like drink mixology or whatever, right? Or you are like an alchemist and you have conjured many different potions. So anything that could be related to crafting potions or observing potions, identifying things, or maybe haggling, right? Perhaps you're frontman like a potion salesman, right? You're very good at haggling. So perhaps even haggling could be something that you roll with your potion making skills. And so that's what an expertise is. And when you roll with something related to your expertise, you roll with your knowledge stat. Right. And so with that, you stop relying on this thing where, I have to add a very specific attribute, like an ability score to play a certain way, right? To role play a certain way. You can now just instead base more of that upon your character's backstory or their knowledge or things they're knowledgeable about. Right? There's no reason why you should have to make a bad roll if you already know how to solve this problem by default. Like you have done this a million times. Why must I roll because I have a bad dump stat? Right? And thus, that's why we have no wisdom and int because it's combined into that, and why the existence of knowledge is there. Yeah. And there's no skills. Yes, that's right. So with that, I think that is the right. So yeah, that's for Frost. So I did not make the prompt for the very last one, but I'll just add on to that is that one of the reasons why we removed the whole like skill thing, besides it just being like overwhelmingly long and a hassle to reference while you're in the middle of a game, right? It's much easier when you are creating a character and tell them, like these two traits are kind of like your core defining thing, right? That you've decided, that the players decided themselves, right? When they're making their character, they decide these two expertise alongside the GM, right? That these two traits are like your core identity, your background. They could change over the time of your adventure, but generally these are going to be the way in which you're going to role play your character, right? And having played tested this many sessions at this point, right? So the way that we've done our playtest is that we have had multiple playtests where we've tested the different quests, like so the way that we design the adventure, the mini adventure, is that the adventure comes with a set of quests, and then we have playtested a single quest with different players, some with the same players, some with different players, right? And we have playtested every single quest multiple times. And one of the things that we've really come to find that is very interesting and true, and um, quite positive to us, is that when players determine their expertise, and in these playtests, we let them create their characters, right? When players determine their expertise, they tend to role play their expertise out in a more aggressive is not the right word. They plan to just roleplay out whatever this expertise is more, right? Because these are things that are very relatable to them because they choose whatever these expertise are. And even though certain GMs or certain players might say that yes, like what if you meta game around this thing? Yeah, then as a GM you just say no, right? Like that's up to you. If they want to suggest the way to use their skill, you can just say no, right? But generally, we will recommend like expertise have to be determined by your background, and these are skills and traits that your character has already like spent multiple years practicing, or it could be a gift that they're born with. So as we were mentioning Daera at the start of this stream, right? Like the Daera could perhaps they could see spirits. I don't know. Like it doesn't have to be like an actual active like damaging skill, right? It could just be like, oh, I have been gifted with the sight of gods and it has tormented me. So whenever I am dealing with like graveyards, it's like, yes, technically I can try to talk to this spirit, but does it how usable is that as an expertise really, right? Perhaps they're undertaker, right? Oh, then maybe you're really good at digging holes, right? Which might also be true if you're a miner, right? Those are like examples of expertise that you could possibly have. One example that we had was that we had a player who was like uh he used to own like a brothel, and so that was his expertise. So he's like a brothel master, and so whenever he whenever during the playtest when he was approaching this quest, right, which we have tested with the other groups, he approached it in a completely different way. And yeah, like because normally if you were to play a different a typical character with a fixed set of skills based on your class, you're going to play them in a more predictable manner, right? Now when you have very out there and crazy expertise that come from players who you might not expect, right? And as a GM, of course, depending on how you wanna how crazy you want your actual game to be, right, which is determined by you as a GM, right? It opens for a lot more active role playing, right? And that is something that we have seen is very positive. In the sense that, okay, let's just say like the guy who was doing the brothel play, right? One of the things that he did was that he have seen this because he had this backstory where his home turf was in a different town, right? And one of the NPCs that he saw happened to go to that town or was from that town. And so this is something where he kind of like inserted in. It's like, have I seen this guy before as someone who has worked there? And because of that, can I, roll with expertise or knowledge against this person instead, right? And that is something that is some GMs might say that this is something where it's like stepping into the line of writing the story with the game master and whatnot. But I would push back and say that this is more like a suggestion, right? Suggestion to try and do a more collaborative storytelling thing, which end of the day is the more modern goal of TTRPGs. Less simulationist and more collaborative storytelling, right? And that is something that we also want to promote more with the system. It is very much less so simulationist TTRPG, and more so like a in the roleplay sense, right? It's much less rules heavy and very much rules light. Yep. So okay, it has been about 51 minutes, and I am out of topics to talk about today. So I'm just gonna go through the usual stuff, right? So if you have watched to this point, thank you for watching the stream. And I'm just gonna do the spiel, which is that we are going to be launching our upcoming TTRPG on Kickstarter, Aeons of Adventure, the basic set. And the link for the pre-launch page is already in the description below, along with our social media. So there's our X, there's Instagram, Facebook group, Discord channel, and of course this YouTube channel itself. Please subscribe and like the video, leave a comment, all of the algorithm stuff, right? So yep, there'll be a basic set. And in the basic set, there will be a rulebook. There will be the, let's see. Yeah, so this is like, it's going to be a rulebook. It's a 64-page book. There's going to be another book with a different cover, right? There's going to be the adventure book itself. It will come with many skill cards. So from our, I think like 12 masteries plus 3 armor masteries, and then the races, right? So that number of cards for the players, and then a bunch of monster cards for the GMs, and then there will be, you know, your reference sheets, your character sheets, monster tokens. There will be an A3 map. There will be a gridded map as well, but it will just be a standard grid, so there won't be any designs for like the combat scenes, right? And there will be some reference pictures. There will be a quick start guide for you to pass to players. These are, a lot of these things are handouts, right? So we're designing the basic set. A lot of the physical pieces are meant to be handed out to players. Of course, the digital version, you just pass them the PDF or the JPEG, right? But in the physical one, we want to create a lot of things to hand out to players so they can hold on to these things, right? And that is the way that we design the game to be played, right? So yeah, there'll be all these handouts, and then there'll be 5 pre-gen characters, and the 5 pre-gen characters, each one of them will have character sheets that are all filled out for you already. So you don't have to like figure out all of the stats and just start playing the game. Even leveling up is done for you. So like for example, these 5 guys, they all have pre-gen stats, and with each character sheet, it will go from level 1 to 5. So there'll be like 5 faces of the thing, right? So 3 pieces of paper each, and then 5 sides, right? Then along with that, there will also be a one-shot that is a solo. It's meant to be a solo adventure for you to learn how to play the game. It's a simple like basic rule set basically, right? That will be available when the Kickstarter launches. So please go and follow the Kickstarter in the description below, right? And so with that, my plug is done, and I have been John. It is now 8:50, almost 5. So I did not hit 1 hour today, but I suppose enough, right? If you have any questions that you would like for me to answer during the design diary, and provided I actually answer them, if you didn't get the question answered, just drop in a comment to ask again, right? Yeah, so if you have any questions that you'd like to be answered in Design Diary, please leave it in the comments below, or you can go to our Discord channel and drop them into the Tavern Talk channel, right? And with that, I'll be signing out.